I'm back. And hopefully Evan Roos will be back as well. Big surprise for me, Evan Roos. A surprise for you?
Yes, very much a surprise.
Stop agreeing with me.
Yeah. No, so obviously Dwayne's out. We're looking for a replacement. Evan is a guy, obviously, I've been on the Evan train quite vocally supporting him. I love Evan's athleticism and the power and speed he brings to that position. But in all fairness, Evan hasn't exactly taken his opportunities as much as I'd like to have seen. So I think he's played six tests, right? 6 or 7.
7 tests, he's won 6.
He's won 6 of them, yeah. So he lost the first one. He's won 6 in a row. The Boks don't lose because of Evan, but you would have thought against Portugal that Evan would have come out, flexed those biceps and run over a few people and scored some great tries. He still hasn't scored a try for South Africa. I'm not sure whether any of this has factored into Russie's thinking, but I would urge, like I say, I'm very much on the Evan train. He's got to take his shot when it comes, and I know Russie raved about him after the Wales test, but the fact that he dropped the ball right at the line, they got ripped by a Portuguese back, I don't think helped his cause at all.
All right, he's played 7 tests over a period of 3 seasons. He's only 24 years old. Let's not forget that.
Yes.
He's a hell of a talented player. I always get the feeling with Evan Roos that maybe he's just trying a little bit too hard.
I agree.
And it shows in a kind of a frantic approach. So he's busy. I've always believed in I'd rather have a player who's making a lot of mistakes because he's trying a lot of things. But there does come a point in terms of his evolution from a URC player to a test player that his error rate has to be lower, firstly. And then there's certain aspects of his game that you just expect him to be dominant in. And again, it's Portugal, it's 64-21, it's flamboyant. It was a game of 7s at one stage. Everyone had white line fever. Everyone wanted to score a try. But you just got a hint when he was subbed so early that, hang on a second, he's not getting on a plane to Australia. And it's not because he hasn't played against Australia. He's played against them. Like we said, he's won 6 out of the 7 test matches he's been involved in, including coming on at Twickenham against England and being very good. And he was good against Wales at Twickenham earlier this season, and Russie raved about him. And he was the one name that Russie consistently mentioned during the Ireland series has been unlucky not to be in this match 23. So is it a case that they've told him to go back and work at certain things and he's been primed for New Zealand? Or do we see him play Argentina again?
It's pure speculation. I just think, I don't think Evan Roos is one of Russie's favourite guys. I get the feeling like maybe he's a bit of a wild kid, and I don't know. It's based on nothing more than just my perception. But I get the feeling like Russie's not a huge Evan Roos fan. I could be completely wrong in that. I hope that he's back to play the All Blacks. I rate Evan very highly. I think maybe what troubles Evan is a bit of the Bruce Banner effect. The Incredible Hulk, right? That guy struggles to control his alter ego. And I think Evan, a lot of talk has been about him being ill-disciplined and kind of giving away unnecessary penalties and that sort of thing. And I think that monster inside of him, he can't really sit on the fence with that. He's either got to be the monster guy and then play the way that we love about him, or he kind of keeps the monster in the box and then it's a bit of a muted performance. I think he's somewhere in between there is the Evan that he needs to be in the test arena, and I think he's probably struggling to find the balance with that.
Could it be, though, that a guy like Evan Roos burst onto the scene as he did in the opening year of the URC and then has kind of not quite flourished as we thought he would at test level, but that his time could come when he's 26 or 27?
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because some players, Sasha being one of them, arrive at 21 and they look like they've been there forever. You get players like Dwayne Vermeulen who were 28 before they got their test opportunity, and once there, never looked back.
Yeah.
You got a guy like Ben Jason Dixon who put in the hard yards for the Stormers over the last 2 years, immediately got a gap and just looks comfortable. And when I say looks comfortable, let's bear in mind it was Portugal, okay? So a lot of people are raving about the way the Boks played at certain stages. I've seen a lot of people raving about the All Blacks against Fiji and how much more of an identity they had. That wasn't England. Portugal's not Ireland. So let's also not make that mistake of comparing apples with apples when actually it's apples with pears. The Portugal game was a great run around, 7 debutants for the Boks. gave guys some confidence. Mapimpi scored 3 tries. Sasha looked like a god when he came on. Ben Jason Dixon had a good game. Jan Hendrik Wessels can say he's a test Springbok now. Andre Juchefent is finally there. Salman Murad has captained the team. So there were great positives to take in terms of ticking boxes. 22 of the players who are at the World Cup are now going to go to Australia to play back-to-back tests in Brisbane and in Perth. 6 of those 23 from the Portugal test, Evan Roos being one of them, aren't there. They're in the frame. And a few more who played against Wales are also out at the moment. Jordan Hendricks have been one of them. And then obviously Edward van der Merwe, who has been injured, so he wasn't available. Watching the game against Portugal, the initial struggle in the opening 20 minutes as Portugal came at us, are we overhyping the depth that's available to these Springboks outside of that top 23 and thinking that it is a like-for-like replacement? Because Rassie made a big statement which I thought was more humour than on the money when he said that 23 that played against Portugal could have taken on the 23 that played against Ireland. Maybe if he's refereeing, but I don't think...
I think if they had taken on the 23 from Ireland, they would have lost by 30 points.
Yeah, Ireland would have had a very famous and comfortable series win in South Africa.
Yeah.
The gap between 1 and 2 in a lot of positions is quite significant.
No, it is significant, and I think that's true across the world, and I think that gap is probably smaller in South Africa than it is in a lot of other countries. I think the backups here are a lot closer to the starters than in other countries. But when Rassie said that was a B team, or he said that wasn't a B team, he was telling the truth. It was probably closer to a C team. So, I don't think those guys are anywhere near the starters as a unit. That team that he picked, and certainly in terms of the quality of the performance, it'll have to go up a level against Australia, and certainly the All Blacks later on in the rugby.
Well, let's put it to the test because this is what a lot of people have been debating: Willie or Fassi. Now, Willems is not there; he's injured. Who do you go with?
It has to be Willie.
Okay, the 2 winners: Colby up against Colby and Orense up against Mpimpi and whoever else.
Yeah, no, definitely Kirtley and Kanan. Kirtley and Cheslin.
Okay, now you've got Jesse Krill or Lucky Am up against...
Jesse Krill right now is the guy, so you have to go with him.
Against Andre Esterhuizen and Damien Delande.
That's an easy one.
Pollard against Marnie Lebok and Sasha.
Easy one.
All right, Sasha. At 9, you got Graham Williams, Fuff, and now Morne van der Berg coming in.
Yeah, so
there is a difference in the 3.
Definitely.
8, we don't know who we want at the moment because Jasper was the chosen one. He's been suspended. When you look at the loose trio, the starting trio, Peter Steph Toy, with the greatest respect to BJ Dixon in terms of work rate, there's just no comparison.
A healthy Peter Steph Toy.
There's just no comparison. And then Sio Khaleesi against whoever else comes on in the last 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Where there is a big difference for me is in our starting locks and the depth in lock there. Franco Mostyn and Eamon in form, comfortably the number 1 pairing.
Yeah.
And the only one who would basically challenge that is Alert de Jager.
Yeah.
I thought the Viking got through 80 minutes. It was the kind of game that he loves. He's like the Sonny Boy Williams of forwards.
100%.
Offloading everywhere. Nando's got a great ad out of him. But I would also want to see a little bit more physicality and mongrel from him in the bigger tests when we play the likes of New Zealand, play the likes of England at the end of the year tour, because they're also going to know he goes for the offload first. And a guy his size, just to get more balance to his game in terms of when to offload and when to take contact. And then just to finish this exercise, at the moment it's Mark Mbongi, and then comfortably number 3 is way behind them. And I think the same with the newer props that have come in. If you look at the Jan Hendrik Wessels prop hooker, now you compare him to a Kitsi, there's definitely an A team and there's definitely a C team.
Definitely.
And combine them, you probably get a B team.
And look, those guys that we say are in the C team could grow into being great Springboks. We're just talking about the right here and the right now.
Because if they're that good, they would have played against Ireland.
Correct.
Australia, three wins out of 3. They played Georgia. They rushed to 26-10 ahead. A Hanont for 40-29. Again, a bit like Portugal. Georgia went coast to coast, scored some great tries. But then let's also put it into context. That Georgia side beat Portugal 36-10 in the final a couple of months ago of the second-tier European Championships.
Correct.
So Georgia's improved a lot. Portugal, I love the way they play, and I think they certainly honour the trajectory is the right way. The game is growing there. There's flamboyance to their style of play. But again, it was Portugal, and for the New Zealanders, it was Fiji. And that 47-5 win for the All Blacks it's the worst performance they've ever put in against Fiji in terms of average.
Yeah.
So for people who are saying Ricky Ioane, goodbye, Billy Proctor in, a little bit of context. You know, it's going to be different when they play Argentina now, the All Blacks. It's going to be different when we play Australia. And obviously the big one, and it's the cover of SA Rugby magazine, another fantastic effort, mate. It's get ready for Rassie and Razor.
What a headline.
It's the Boks versus the All Blacks, the greatest rivalry ever. And as we keep on reminding people, 2026, the All Blacks are coming to South Africa. They're playing 3 test matches. They're playing 4 matches against the URC franchises, and they're playing 1 invitational match. And then in 2030, we go back there and we play 5 Super Rugby matches,
Glorious.
3 test matches, and maybe even a 4th test match somewhere else. And then next year is also going to be a big test because we go to New Zealand, we play back-to-back tests there, and Australia comes here. So we know we've got 10 points for next year's Rugby Championship. We've banked them against the Wallabies here.
Famous last words.
But it could be a bit of a tussle next year against New Zealand in New Zealand when both teams will have evolved. For now, though, we have to talk about the Brisbane factor. It is the one place we go to in Australia where I know the guys have a fabulous time. I mean, the beaches on the Gold Coast, the good-looking sights there on every level, the food, just the friendliness.
Cannot find chicken wings in Brisbane. Cannot find them. Cannot get chicken wings anywhere.
I'm sure Nando's can sort that out for the boys. I'm sure they can sort that out. But we don't go there and win.
No.
And that's going to be a huge mental challenge for this team, is to go there and win in Brisbane. Because when we go to Perth, people say a lot of South Africans there. It's a home game away from home, which I don't quite agree with. But Brisbane is a factor like Ellis Park used to be for the All Blacks. Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane. Something happens to us and something happens to those blokes wearing gold.
It's true.
We're obviously closer to the game. We're going to talk about that. This 33 squad that he's chosen.
Yes.
Do you see all 33 playing across 2 tests? Or do you see some going along just for the ride, just for the experience of being on tour?
No, I think that's definitely going to be the case. I'm quite interested to see also when they get back what the thinking is around how much of the squad sticks around for the All Blacks. I think Rassie is trying a few things. We're going to see some interesting decisions at 9 where you've only got Kobus, Grant and Mornay now because Faf is out. And also he's got to make some decisions around fly half. Like this is it now. Rugby Championship is here. It's a huge game in Brisbane. Who's going to be on the bench for fly half? So choices at 8, I think are going to be interesting. There's a lot of stuff. A lot of interesting calls are going to have to be made in the next couple of weeks.
Does he not say, for example, Pollard is 1 at the moment. Sasha, I would say, is leapfrog Marnie in terms of what he offers at 10. And Marnie's there in the frame. That's why he's going on tour. That he may look at the 2 Wallaby tests and say, up front to Sasha, you get in the first crack. Because Pollard's my double World Cup winner. I know what I got in him. I may put him on the bench if I need a bit of an insurance policy. And alternatively, Pollard then starts in Perth. And he says, I'm taking a variation to my 2 squads. And when I come back, I've played potentially 2 different styles and see what results we get out of there. But then to say to a guy like Sasha, I'm backing you. Go out there. What I found encouraging about the Portugal game was he didn't wait to 65 minutes to pull the halfbacks. On 44 minutes, he said to Kobus and Marnie, you're off, and to Mornay and Sasha, you're on. And it still wasn't at a stage where the game was 55-5.
Yeah.
They still had to play a bit.
Yeah.
And that was very encouraging that he gave them that kind of game time. And then for Sasha to play 36 minutes, beat 3 defenders, kick every penalty and conversion that he had. Probably his only blemish, and you can't blame him, a cross-cover tackle that anyone could have been stepped there. But to be the MVP, to be the fans' MVP, was just a great result for his impact in those 36 minutes. Do you see both of them starting a test match?
You know, I would love to say yes. I'd love for both of them to start. Again, it's going to come down to, is Rassie trying to win the Rugby Championship, or is there an element of this Rugby Championship that is about building for the future? And his selections around that are definitely going to answer those questions. So if Sasha does get a start, nice mug. If Sasha does get a start, then I think it's going to be indicative of where this team is going in the short term with Rassie and what some of those objectives are. If we see Handre in there in his full metal jacket as it was against Ireland, then clearly the objective is we need to try and win this rugby championship.
But I don't think it is full medal, Jack.
No,
I
agree with you.
I think this rugby championship is going to be...
And I like that. I like that Russie's got the balls to do that, if that's the way it goes, because I think that is important.
I think it's going to be... When I say experimentation, it's not going to be wholesale changes.
No, sure.
It's going to be tweaking. It's going to be giving those fringe players a little bit more game time, kind of building towards the end of the year tour, where England, I think, shapes as the big game now for them, given how England were in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And also, again, saying I know what I've got in that 23 who played in the final, those who are left, who played in the 2019 final. They're going to be around. If they're still fit and firing, they're going to go to 2027. So it's more a case of us not seeing it as a player being dropped, but as a rotation. It's not Pollard's been dropped. He's now number 2. Sasha Omani's now number 1. We need to give 2 and 3 enough game time against enough quality opposition. So by the time they get to a World Cup, and if they have to play in a semi-final, final, it's not foreign to them. The example I use also is 2015 World Cup, where Dan Carter in his final season was struggling with injury, was struggling with form, and it was, can he make it back, can't he make it back? And then they opted to leave him out for the test match against the Springboks at Ellis Park, and they picked Sopahaga at 10, and he had a blinder, and they beat us. And then Carter played the Wallabies the very next week at Eden Park, and he was told, today's your day if you want to go to the 2015 World Cup. He had a blinder. They took Carter to the World Cup, but they said to Bowden Barrett, if Carter breaks down, Sopahaga's been flown in, it's a straight swap. You still stay on the bench and perform a role. So that kind of thinking I see permeating within the Springbok squad.
Love that. But what I will also say is that next World Cup is in Australia, and we don't have a great record of winning in Australia. And this is a test in Brisbane, which has been a big stumbling block for us. So there is an imperative that we get the win. As much as I do want to see the guys experiment, and I think it'd be a brave call and a great call, I do also, a big part of me wants the Boks to do whatever has to be done to win this rugby championship opener.
Well, they won in Sydney, 24-8. It was the Kanan Moody debut. Wonderful catch in the air and sprint to the line. It's great to see him back in the mix. Also just a wonderfully gifted player. The decision is, do they play him at 13 or do they continue to play him in the outside backs and know that it's probably closer to 2027 where he becomes a succession plan to Lakanya and Jesse Creel. So we have won in Australia. We've won in Perth. We've won in Sydney. Brisbane is the one. Heineke Meyer's squad, I think 2013 went over there, and it was one of the first times we could pick foreign-based players, and Morné Steyn was one of them. They all flew in, and stand corrected, but I think it was 38-12. It was a magnificent game. Billy LaRue was on fire that day.
Ron Pinar,
yeah, so it shows it can be done. You can fly players in, have 2 sessions together, and actually win a test match.
Yeah.
But when we've had expectation to win, and most notably Sia's side 2 years ago, John Smith's World Cup winners, and ironically they both stumbled 23-18, same kind of scoreline, at Suncorp Stadium. I was there early 2000s with the Springboks. Suncorp Stadium. It's a magnificent facility. It's a first world Newlands. The crowd is right on you. The atmosphere is probably the best you're going to get for an Australian side, and that could also be what it would be like the Ellis Park. And we just hope to God that the World Cup final's not played in Brisbane, but he's played in a big stadium in Sydney. So psychologically, though, we want to win that one.
I think it's important. I mean, isn't there the story with Jake and his Boks and a win in France and him saying, this dressing room, this is where you're going to have the World Cup trophy in between you. This is, same venue, same result. We need to make this happen. And I think there's laying down that marker, there is a psychological point to that, an objective that's worth achieving, I think.
Well, then, to go back to that, to give context, they had just lost to France. And he said, you never want to have this feeling again, and it's possibly that we will play France in the final.
There you go.
Well, they never played France. They played England and they won. So, but I understand what you're trying to say.
Thank you.
If you look at the 33 that have been chosen, if you look at kind of the newbies that have come in, the French players, and the existing group that's there, outside of the 10-9, and I've heard that they're big fans, Tony Brown and Rassie and Sticks, of Morné van der Berg. We know what Grant Williams can do, that it could be the series for the two of them to flourish again. Because I felt when he yanked the two at 44 minutes, there was like a bit of a changing of the guard in the thinking. Kobus Reiner, 34 years old. Mani Lebok, wonderful player. But again, that's just that inconsistency in the goal kicking. Two from 5. He had 1 from 4. Where Sasha came on and just belted them over from everywhere. He just looked comfortable. That within that framework, the pecking order had changed a bit. Just based on what the two produced in the final 36 minutes as opposed to the opening 44. Would that be accurate, or would you say, how can you say that it's Portugal?
No, I would say that is accurate. As we know, within the context that it is Portugal, I think that is accurate. I as much as I see the correlation between the way Mornay plays and the way Faf plays, I would be disappointed if Mornay immediately leapfrogged Grant Williams. I feel like Grant has paid his dues and has unique athletic ability for a team that seems to be trying to stretch his legs on attack. I think he deserves a start. I think we need to find out what we've got in this guy before we consign him to the bomb squad and say that's his role. He's an impact guy and he can cover wing. I would prefer to see them start Grant and have Mornay come off the bench. I mean, he literally made his test debut last week against Portugal, so they don't really know what they've got in him in the test arena. And I'm very much on the fly-off train with Sasha. And we said this in the last podcast. This kid's got to play, and he's got to be groomed to push Andre in the near future.
Look, I was fortunate enough to watch him from his school days at Bishops into the under-20 ranks, where he's also a natural leader on the field. He's captained the under-18s. He's captained the SA under-20s. He slotted in the first URC playoff rounds. He played in the final off the bench. He was barely 20 years old. He's got the BMT. He's shown that time and again when he made his debut for the Stormers, took on the goal kicking responsibilities. He's without a doubt the best kicker in the Western Cape for the Stormers in terms of consistency and accuracy. And he's the closest I've seen to a Dan Carter who's come on the scene and just looks so comfortable.
So comfortable.
Absolutely knows what he wants to do with the ball, understands space, understands width, and certainly understands field position.
He plays the big moments like it's easy.
Yeah, and you don't always see them on TV, those big moments, but it's the way he falls back and controls the game, the way he kind of just sees the field, and he plays this game in slow time. And you speak to all the greats of the game, and especially those in decision-making, 9s, 10s, potentially even 15s. They have the ability to slow the game down and walk their way through, where others seem to be frantic in their decision-making. So he certainly got that. I thought Herschel Gibbs was the best schoolboy player I'd ever seen, at 10, also from Bishops. Went on to become a wonderful cricketer. Dan Carter, for me, was without a doubt the best 10 in the world. Johnny Wilkins was a great 10, but he didn't have the complete game that Carter had in terms of free-flowing. Sasha, the closest that I see to it. I know the one position that you keep on talking about is 8, and I want your thoughts on number 8.
Mate, I got a bolter for you. I would play Ben Jason Dixon at number 8 against the Wallabies in Brisbane. That's what I would do.
Why would you do that?
Ben Jason Dixon showed when he came on that he is very comfortable, a lot like Sasha, just took his opportunities. He played a very direct game, massive work rate all over the field, physical edge, demon tackler. Even though there was chaos at times against Portugal, he looked very calm and settled in his role. And I feel like the Boks have got to make a decision at 8. They've obviously decided not to go the Evan Roos way. A potential guy who's going to be in the mix, obviously, is Jasper Wiese when he comes off suspension. Kwagga's a guy they've played there. For me, there's only so long that you can kind of plug a hole with a gimmick guy. Like you couldn't have played Dion Fourie hooker indefinitely. I think he did a fantastic job at the World Cup, but he wouldn't be a guy that is a permanent fixture at hooker. And I think it's the same with Kwagga at 8. If Sia goes down, Kwagga is for me by far the leading choice to take over at 6. But I don't think you can have a back row with Sia, Kwagga, and Peter Steph du Toit and be consistently successful in the long run. I also think it takes something away from the impact of the bench. So I like Ben Jason Dixon. I think he's a tall unit in the line-out, very adept there, offers value on attack and defense at the line-out, massive work rate, big tackler, comfortable on the ball, direct player. I think he could totally fill in there, and he adds a massive work rate factor to that pack.
So if you playing him at 8, do you play Kwagga off the bench?
Kwagga off the bench, Peter Steph at blindside, and Sia at open side.
And if you take someone like Ulrich Loh, burst onto the scene, got given an opportunity 2 years ago, then completely out the mix at test level, put in a heroic shift with the Bulls, but more like a workman-like shift. The whispers were that he had fallen off the radar, came back into the squad. You surprised that he's been taken ahead of Evan Roos to Australia? Or do you think there's a bigger plan with both?
I am. I wonder how much of that has got to do with the lock injuries, because Ulrich can potentially slot into the second row where Evan is less of an obvious choice there. But for me, like Ulrich, Ruan Nokia's a guy they've called up. These guys have a high work rate in the sort of like, they do an honest day's work. Vickers van Heerden, Jannes Labuskaki, like that kind of a player. They put in the graft, but it's not game changing. They're not game changers. Evan Roos, for his downside, has massive X factor for me, you know. And so I like players that have got a high ceiling. Some coaches would select players that have a high floor, so they can't be disappointed. This guy's going to consistently put in a good effort and never let you down. I like players with the potential to do something great and really impact the game. And so I'm surprised with a guy like Ulrich, because I feel like he's a very good player and would be a starter for most other nations in the world. But in a country like ours that produces loose forwards like we do, I'm not sure whether there's a unique point of difference with him.
Yeah, for me on that one, it's also a huge amount of respect for Ulrich Loh and what he's done at the Bulls. And I know how highly Jake rates him, Gary Gold rates him, Andries Becker rates him. But when I look at a guy like Evan Roos, where I thought they would use him primarily this season, and that I felt he would play against Ireland as well, depending on the split, obviously, whether they went 7-1, 6-2, or 5-3. But I thought most of his season would be off the bench and kind of introduce him into a different role, and that he becomes this explosive last 35 minutes player, because his athleticism would be unmatched in terms of his size, his physique, his youthfulness coming off that bench, where you start him, you get a lot out of him, but in test level, given the loose forwards we've got, I would feel that, especially against a side like Australia, that he could make a huge impact off the bench. He's not going to be there, of course, so that's not going to happen. I just hope that he hasn't been put out to pasture for now, and that he's certainly in the mix for the All Black series, and he kind of adds that kind of dimension. But yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying about Ulrich's versatility going to lock. I just don't know. I mean, I don't know the conversations that obviously the coach has had with Evan, but he's a guy that also plays on confidence. He was buoyant last season. Then he went to Argentina and he did well. And then he didn't make the World Cup squad. He was put on standby. He didn't make the Irish series. He was a lot trumpeted, so unlucky. They were raving about his performance against Wales. And then, unless the Portugal one was like, we can't afford those four kind of basic areas. We can't afford a back stripping the ball off you. We can't afford you losing contact in certain positions. And discipline not interpreted with giving away penalties or being a madman or losing your cool, but discipline with the pull.
But also that's the thing about pro sport, right? You don't get a block of opportunities. Some guys get 10 minutes to prove that they deserve to be there. And if they don't take those 10 minutes, they're out. So Evans played 7 tests. That's what makes Sasha so special. Is they can go grab that oak from playing touch on a Sunday and fly him in for a test match, and he'll hit the ground running. Like, that is a very special kind of, mentally, like psychologically, that's a very special kind of athlete. So Evan, whenever he gets his next gap, has got to take that shot. And for everybody who gets a chance now in this tour of these rookies, you're not going to get 20 tests to prove that you belong. You're not going to get a 10-test run to sort of get yourself into test rugby and prove that you belong. Whenever you get in that green jersey, you got to fire.
So if you look at Kurt Lee, he looked like he belonged the minute he came in.
Yeah.
Okay, incredible strike rate, but just looks so at home in that back three. A lot of credit to the likes of Willie LaRue in terms of how he's also kind of helped him collectively in marshalling from the back. You look at Kane Moody when he arrived.
Exactly.
Playing on the wing, just looked like he'd been there for 10 years. And then when they played him at centre against the All Blacks at Twickenham, he just glided. I mean, he just understood space. He just understood when to movement and kind of when to drift and the width with which he could play as well, and strong and physical enough to be direct. Then you look at a Damien Delandi who just knew he had it. A Pollard, you knew he had it. Sasha, you know he's got it. Roos is the one that I think maybe the expectation is just too much at this juncture for me, but I also thought he would step in with the quality of player around him and just flourish. And it's as if and I said it earlier in the show, it's as if he just sat back a little bit and was happy to be part of the collective. you may just see a different Evan Roos, but it's like he needs to show that I can do a job for you that's as good as a Peter Steph Toy or a Sia Khaleesi or a Dwayne Vermeulen. And maybe he needs to take a leaf out of Dwayne's book and just see the hard yards that Dwayne put in. Dwayne was playing great rugby for the best part of 6 years, but there was Pierce Spies there. There were several other loose forwards there. There was a Bob Skinser that was coming back. Dwayne was on the back foot to that, but the minute he got in, you talk about chances, you couldn't get Dwayne Vermeulen out of that team
100%.
again. The lock stocks, you very surprised with Ruan Nokia?
Yeah, again, almost in that Ulrich Lowe mold. Another honest day's work. Puts in a lot of running meters, gets around the park. Very good player. Again, not really any sort of X-factor game-changing ability. I know they've got a lot of injuries at 5, but Ruben van Heerden is a guy I would have looked at there. Just an interesting call. I think also what's interesting is the guys that haven't made the squad. Like, I cannot believe that in South Africa we are blessed with such an abundance of wealth of talent that a guy like Wilco Lowe is watching the box on TV. Like, that guy is amongst the best tight heads in the world, if you ask me. The Bulls' resurgence is hinged on that guy. Ruan Nokia's just been flown up, so 3 of the tight 5 from the Bulls are with the box. Wilco's not one of them. And for me, he was the linchpin in that set piece. So
why do you think that is?
That he's not there, or that
he's not there? What don't they rate about him?
I suppose, look, the fact that they're trying a guy like Jan-Hendrik Wessels talks to what they're potentially trying to do with this attack and what guys can do in general play. They want guys who can carry and move around, and Wilco's probably not the most mobile tight forward in the world. But if you're going to measure him on what his job is, which is scrumming and winning scrum penalties and going forward and giving the Oaks a base, I'm not sure how many guys Frans Malherbe I would put ahead of him. I'm not sure I'd put anybody else ahead of Wilco. I think he's a phenomenal scrummager and a phenomenal tight head. So as mobile as Thomas du Toit is, and he scores off the back of the maul for Bath or whatever it is, I'm just surprised that a guy like Wilco Lowe is not there.
Is Thomas the Tank du Toit going to be one of those nearly men for you? He's been given so many opportunities. We know his capability to be very good. But I never look at a game of his at test level and think, wow. Be it in his primary functions or in just an all-round contribution, I think he's okay. As opposed to being, like you say, a Wilco kind of performance in that semi-final against Leinster. Some of the performances we've seen from a Kitsy and from a France and from a Vincent Koch, a Trevor, and obviously an Ox. I never look at Thomas du Toit and think, like I look at Ox and think, you just come on and made some serious
but that's my point.
Damage.
But in a way, we're kind of complaining that the caviar is not cold enough here. You know, like, these Oaks are great players. Like Thomas du Toit, fantastic player. Vincent Koch, fantastic player. When he was at the Pumas, Oak was phenomenal, old Vincent Koch, just crushing Oaks. Very good player. I'm just saying, in a country where you produce the talent that we do, for me to overlook a Wilco Lowe just seems criminal, man. So, and that's just my personal preference. These Oaks are looking at data and they know their plans infinitely better. I'm just saying, from the outside looking in, Wilco Lowe's a guy. After Frans Malherbe, I'd write down Wilco Lowe's name. So,
okay, if we look at the box, winning the World Cup 12-11 against New Zealand, coming back here, we get to the URC, the Bulls host the quarterfinal, semi-final, final, and they go down to a Glasgow team. Loftus is packed to the rafters. We play Ireland, packed Loftus first test, packed Durban second test, Bloemfontein packed, sold out for the Portugal. Just incredible buzz around South African rugby.
what was the cost of those tickets to Bloem?
Mate, I'm not interested in the cost. What I can say is the buses were very expensive to get them there, okay? Packed to the rafters. 50,000, 50,000, 45,000. The game is healthier because we're World Cup winners, back-to-back World Cup winners. That Springbok team is popular. They loved Rassie Kenduno, Ron. The public just adores him. They adore the fact that Tony Brown's here, that Jerry Flanders here, that Sticks and Don Heman and Dion Davids are still doing their thing. Sia's still around leading the team. There's goodwill around this team all the time.
Yes.
If you take the fact that we drew the series with Ireland, won as comfortably as by 40 points as we said we would against Portugal, what do you see as the greatest positives looking at this Bok 33 that's going to go to Australia now compared to where we were the morning after the World Cup final win?
12 syllables, Sasha Feinberg and Gome Zulu. I don't know how many syllables there are on that, but there are a lot. No, for me, he's been the find of the season. bodes extremely well for the future of Springbok rugby. To have a guy as versatile as Sasha in such an influential position at a time where we have real question marks around who is behind Handré Pollard and what the future is there, is a massive, massive boon to South African rugby. We still have a ferocious pack of forwards. I don't think we lost the second test against Ireland because we've necessarily got the wrong guys. We've raised some questions about the way that we play, and I think that's something that will come out in the wash. But the plan that the Boks uses at the World Cup with the players they've got now still makes them the best team in the world. So the questions are they still the best team in the world if they move off those players or off that plan? And that's a question that they will answer in the coming weeks and months. I think the Boks are in a prime position to take advantage of an Australia team that is not very good, an Argentina team that is still finding its feet under a new coach, and an All Blacks team that isn't the most ferocious one we've ever seen come out of that country. So we're in a great place to take advantage of those teams, potentially win a rugby championship title, and along the way, give opportunities to some of the most exciting youngsters that have come through the ranks in a long time.
Would you go back and say we played against Ireland, 1-1 was the series, it took 2 extraordinary drop goals in the last 5 minutes for them to clinch that game by a point, and that's something we got to sit with, but it's a measurement of how close those two teams are to each other, Ireland and South Africa, and they are 1 and 2 in the world, and that the likes of a New Zealand, England are a little bit down the pecking order, and then the rest are there, and you lump Australia with a Wales behind a Scotland, for example, at the moment, maybe even with an Italy, that this rugby championship should be South Africa's, with the potential, especially playing New Zealand twice in South Africa, with the potential to slip up in one game in Australia, just mentally. But it's a South Africa with 3 or 4 young faces that are certainly taking off for the 2027 World Cup.
Yeah, I think that we are in the sort of, we're watching trailers to the movie. We've watched some of the ads, and the movie is about to begin. And I think we are going to see the plot twists and understand the theme of this movie in this rugby championship. We'll get a very good picture of where the Boks are right now, where New Zealand is, and how Australia are growing under Schmidt. And I think there'll be a lot more clarity. We're just in that grey phase where, yes, the World Cup is behind us. We've had a bit of an iffy series against Ireland. We've had some fun against Portugal. And now it's gloves off. It's the real deal now. It's rugby championship. And we're going to see guys like Sasha under the brightest lights.
Is it encouraging and exciting for you that we have a rugby championship where it's not same old, same old? 3 new coaches up against Rassie, and Rassie effectively back as head coach. So you could say 4 new coaches out of the 4 rugby championship teams. Some exciting matchups because South Africa traditionally have struggled in Australia, and New Zealand have shown an ability to win in South Africa. And Argentina love traveling. They seem to be worse off at home than when they get on the road. They seem to be galvanized when they get on the road, and they do particularly well. But that it's also not going to have the intensity of a World Cup.
Yes.
Because it's a league phase. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
And that allows for freedom of choice in selection. It allows for a bit more risk. And this period, and as Rassie continually says, because of COVID, he and Jacques Nienaber didn't have the opportunity to use 2020 as the bloody year to the Lions series. They had no year. They basically had an SAA game before that Lions series and 40 minutes against Georgia.
Yeah.
Effectively.
Yeah.
For those guys to go in and win that series against the Lions, which still to this day makes it one of the most remarkable series wins. And to come from 1-0 down and win that series with no home fan base, no rugby played against a collective of 4 home unions that had played a full 6 nations and an autumn international series. So I'm always reminded when I reflect on where this team has come from in 2018, or the squad has come from under Rassie, and then when Jacques Nienaber was in charge, to constantly anchor myself and say, wow, they have achieved so much. The Sunday Times column I wrote where I praised Sash, and was written pre the Portugal game as well. I was reflecting on the Irish series, and kind of just, and I called it on his magical carpet ride, a bit like Aladdin. But it was jotting down what Rassie's done. And not forgetting Jacques at all. I mean, he's integral to all of that.
Totally.
So Rassie, since he came back with Jacques, they've won in Australia. Maybe not in Brisbane, but they've won in Australia. They've won in New Zealand. They've won in Argentina. They've won in France, against France at the most critical time, a World Cup final. They've won in England at Twickenham. They've beaten every team, including Ireland, although it was in South Africa. The only thing this team hasn't done yet is go to Ireland and win a test match. So there's something there for him to be challenged. They've won a rugby championship. They've won 2 World Cups. And they won a British and Irish Lions series. Everything is set up with the squad of players that he's built for this team to go out and actually do the three-peat, which has never been done before. So while we always chat, debate, because we, as bigger fans as we are kind of professionally commentating on the game, we are always cognizant of just an incredible achievement the last 6 years have been under Rassie Erasmus and Nienaber. And for people to also kind of understand where we come from, where we watch the game and there's emotion involved, and just because Rassie says it so, it doesn't mean it is so. We're going to challenge that. Doesn't mean we don't acknowledge what he's done and what he's achieved. That's my monologue, by the way.
I like the sound of it. I'll also say, mate, that this is also new territory for Rassie because he hasn't coached without Nienaber before for an extended period. And that duo is deadly, as proven by 2 Rugby World Cups and numerous other epic wins. So Rassie's also going to, there's an element of the unknown here with Rassie and no Jacques. And there's a lot of moving parts to this thing. At the next World Cup, the guys that won the last World Cup, not all of them are going to be there. And at some point between now and then, there's going to be a moment in a match that determines the fate of one of those guys being overtaken by a newcomer. And that makes every single test the Boks play now exciting.
All right. The biggest one we talk about, it's on the cover of your magazine. Get rep for Rassie and Razor. They both played for the All Blacks and Springboks respectively. They both fine loose forwards. Razor magnificent with the Crusaders, 7 successive Super Rugby titles. I know Borchi says only 5. Simon Borchard, who works in SARugbymag magazine editor, always corrects me and says, we weren't there for those other ones. We were there for many of the New Zealanders won. So we'll give him his 7. He's now got 3 wins, 2 wins against England. There could have been 2 defeats. He made 11 changes, went to San Diego in an exhibition match, and beat a Fijian side that he said was more physical, the players. The All Black players said was more physical than the England series, which I found odd because 11 of them didn't play against England.
That may explain why they thought it was more physical, mate.
Exactly. So, coaches say some things and we just gobble it up,
please.
As the media, and
Totally.
don't kind of challenge it.
Totally.
But you've seen them play 3 test matches now against a good opposition and against an opposition they expected to beat. What have you made of them as an emerging side against what we've seen with the Boks as a very settled side introducing emerging talent?
Yeah, I think the All Blacks are always dangerous because they're a smart rugby nation and they're blessed with an abundance of skill and physical ability. Okay, they are obviously, they set the tone, 75% win rate all time against the top rugby nations in the world. So New Zealand knows how to play rugby. They're the dons of rugby to a lot of people around the world outside of the Republic. And even though some of those selections, I'm not sure how many of those guys are going to survive in Razor's tenure, they are supremely talented. Damien McKenzie's a great playmaker and a guy who can turn a small opportunity into 5 points. And they've got that kind of talent around the field. And a guy like Beauden Barrett's playing off the bench with 120 plus caps. You've got serious players available to you. So I think there are some tight 5 questions that may need, especially in the second row, that they'll need to answer. Their front row is coming on in leaps and bounds, certainly growing in their ability and the threat that they pose to other teams. Second row and back row, some questions to answer. And obviously, TJ Perenara coming back into that team adds massive value from an experience and physicality point of view. And then also some young kids coming through at key positions there too. So I expect the All Blacks to come back and come back fast.
If you look at Joe Smith and the Wallabies, everyone knew this was going to be a rebuild. He does have the luxury of bringing in a Will Skelton, a Cotabeti, some of his international, his foreign-based players. I think they can pick 3 or 4 that he's certainly going to do. Is that enough for them to realistically be a challenge in the Bledisloe Cup and also to the Springboks?
No, I'm going to say no. I think Joe's a great coach, and I think they do have some talent in Australia. But if Australia bounce back to become real contenders again, it's going to be because Joe Schmidt, through talent identification, finds players that we haven't heard of. I mean, you could tell by the way I read that team list, there are already guys like that. in the Wallabies lineup. And he's going to have to find players that we haven't heard of that bring a unique skill set to a plan that he crafts that accentuates what they do. It's not going to be through bringing back Will Skelton and Korobeti. It's going to be in finding, potentially, Flash Gordon was that guy at the last World Cup, you know. Eddie Jones rolled the dice on him and needed him to come through. He didn't really land. But that's where Joe Schmidt is going to have to make up the missing ground there, is through finding guys that have a unique skill set, whether it's power, skill, speed, and building a plan around players that can change the game. I don't feel like just picking the Super Rugby's best performers and having a clever plan is really going to turn Australia into contenders.
All right, and then last week you phoned me. You were all very excited because you had done a little bit of work. And when we spoke last week, and I said, South Africans need to accept that historically we've lost 37% of our tests. We're a 63% winning test rugby nation. So the disappointment is going to be there for close to 40% of the time. And it caused a lot of debate and a lot of discussion on social media, and people had a lot of opinions on it. And then you gave me some interesting data to say, what are you bitching and moaning about 63% for? It's the second best in the world.
Yeah, so I mean, if you've got a 63% win rate as an NFL punter, you are amongst the best, okay? Being able to pick 63% wins in the NFL makes you a rich man, because that league is so unpredictable. So a team that can consistently win at a level of almost 2/3 is doing a good job. I think where our perspective gets skewed is by the mighty All Blacks, who have an all-time win rate of 75% against the top rugby nations. And it creates the expectation that anything less than that is poor. But when you look at the numbers all-time, so not in the professional era, but all-time, so you take the Five Nations teams, so exclude Italy, and you take the Rugby Championships teams, including Argentina, and you look at their all-time record against each other, so the top rugby nations in the world, South Africa's win rate is 60%, the All Blacks are at 75%. And to put that in context, the only other team of those 9 nations, so England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Argentina, Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, and France, the only other team with a win rate that is in excess of 50% is England at 51%. So all time, Ireland's win rate against the other 8 nations that I mentioned is 40%. So we're sitting at 50% higher win rate than Ireland as South Africa. And I think we need to embrace that and celebrate that. That is a fantastic success rate.
So does that put into context Dan Carter's record of 99 test wins and a draw out of 112, and Richie McCaw 15 defeats and 2 draws out of 148, 80 plus of those tests played away from home, and 26 tests he played against South Africa and he lost 6, and he won more tests in South Africa than the Springboks have won in New Zealand in the history of the game.
I love it when you talk numbers.
Does that just tell you how we should be appreciative of how good those two players were?
This is the greatest Springbok team in the history of Springbok rugby, but that All Blacks team with Richie and Dan Carter is the best rugby team of all time.
Because they won 11 and 15 and they won 90% of their games in between, playing more than 50% of their games away from home. It'd be a hell of a game.
Mate. Wow.
And it'd be a hell of a game because you go back to, I did an interesting exercise with Graham from Survivor during and after the Portugal test. And then he asked me who is the greatest team? And I said, to me, in the professional era, the greatest rugby team is that All Blacks 2011 to 2015. Second, I said to him, would be the Springboks 2007 to 2009 and that peak in 2009.
Yeah.
Interesting enough, Richie McCaw rated that 2009 team the best he's ever played in his whole career, and they won 3 on the trot against the All Blacks. Then third, I would go the England team between 2000 and 2003. Fourth, I would go this 2019 to 2023 Bok team. And fifth, you'd have to give it to the Wallaby team of probably of 1999. That was Brumbies dominated. I'd say those would be the top 5 teams.
What about Nick's team that went, 16, 17 in a row? 16.
Yeah, look, they didn't win a World Cup, so I'm also putting that into context as well, okay? Eddie's team that went 18 in a row, also very impressive. They didn't win the World Cup.
True.
So these 5
teams... You
teams...
didn't mention Ireland, did you?
No, because they just haven't been in a World Cup playoff. Only kidding, boys. They know how to play series, though. So funny enough, when I picked those...
Yes.
It wasn't with, you have to have won a World Cup to qualify for
As
that.
a criterion, okay?
It just happened to be
That they had.
they all had. They had all climaxed their skill set. When they were at the peak of their powers, they won World Cups. And unfortunately, that Nick side got beaten in one of the most incredible semi-finals. It's the Stephen Larkham drop goal, but it's the Yanni de Beer kick into the wind on full time, 18 all, 21-18 they go ahead, 21 all, 26-21, 27-21. I was fortunate to be in the press box at Twickenham today. That is the greatest test match I've ever seen in the professional era without a try being scored. And then they went on to win
the next. But the next, which one are you talking about? The quarterfinal or the semi?
No, that's that semi-final.
I thought you were talking about England. Okay.
No, in 1999.
Yeah.
And then they went on to beat the All Blacks 22-18 in Cardiff in the third and fourth playoff. So those are the fine margins. I mean, they're up there as a great team that Nick had. But if you ask me for my top 5, that's what I gave based on just that when the biggest moments came, they won the biggest title. I don't know who you would put in or what order you would put in.
I think that's a great order. It'd be difficult to argue any of those.
You know, I don't know, guys, you must let us know. You can drop me a mail, keo@keo.co.za, or go on the Twitter feeds, who you think and kind of justify it. It makes for great pub banter. It's not a case that Zels is disagreeing with me or I'm asking him to disagree with me.
I'm contractually obliged.
He is obliged to do it, and as you'll see, thanks for the mug, Zels. He bought me a nice mug this morning as well. You can order them at... But what you've got to go do, if you love rugger, and Zels, Simon Borchard, and his team put together this magnificent SA Rugby magazine. It's a great cover, but it's the content inside that makes it great because it's a celebration of All Blacks against the Springboks. It's the test match we always love. It's the 102 test. They've won, this is the All Blacks, they've won 60, we've won 40. It's 106 tests, 107 tests. There's been 4 draws. We've won 40, they've won 60, which is consistent with their dominance at times.
Yeah.
But it's a wonderful read. It gets us all in the mood for the next 2 months of Rugby Championship rugger. I don't know what I'm going to do for the rest of the week and the early part of next week, knowing that there's no test rugby this weekend.
Oh.
But it's a breather before the big games start. Tune into us next week. We're going to give you a breather later this week because there's really nothing to talk about. And then from next week on, we talk Bokke. We talk psychology, we talk the Wallabies, we talk Brisbane, and we see what the All Blacks are made of when they play a pack.